Hey guys, today's math lesson is lesson 103, starting on page 654. Today we're talking about fractions equal to 1 whole and 1/2. And this should be fairly simple. Basically, a fraction that's equal to 1 whole means it takes up the whole thing. So think of like a pizza. If I were to divide this pizza into 2 pieces, it's like a personal size pizza. So I'm just going to split it in half. And if I were to eat both of those pieces, I've eaten 2 of the 2 pieces, which means I ate the whole thing. I cut it in 2 pieces and I ate both, so 2 halves is equal to 1 whole. Now let's say I decided to cut the pizza into thirds. And again, I ate all 3 pieces. So I ate 3/3. That equals 1 whole. I hope you see a pattern. If you're not seeing it yet, I'll do one more and see if you catch on to the pattern, okay? Same pizza. This time I'm going to cut it into fourths, and I eat all 4 pieces. So I ate 4/4 of the pizza, meaning I ate the whole pizza. So I ate 1. So what do you see? Think about what you're seeing in common with all those fractions. Give you a second. Yes, they all have a matching number on the top and bottom. The numerator and the denominator are the same. Anytime the numerator and denominator are the same, it's 1 whole. Because if you have something and you have divided it into equal pieces, and then all of those pieces are shaded or eaten or given away, that's all of it. That's the whole thing. So let's go ahead and look at some examples together, starting on 655. Example 1 says, which of these fractions equals 1? You have 1/6, 5/6, 6/6, or 7/6. Well, in order for a fraction to equal 1, the numerator and denominator have to be the same. So which one equals 1? 6/6. That's right. All right, example 2. Write a fraction equal to 1 that has a denominator of 7. Remember, the denominator is the bottom number. So I have my denominator. Well, what's my numerator have to be if I want it to equal 1? 7. They have to match. 7/7 equals 1. So that's pretty simple. Now, if the numerator of a fraction is half the denominator, then the fraction equals 1/2. So if you look at 655 at the bottom, it shows you half of each of these circles shaded, but in different fractions. And notice that the top number of each fraction illustrated is half of the bottom number of the fraction. So 1 is half of 2, 1/2. 2 is half of 4. So 2/4 is equal to 1/2. Because again with the pizza, I have 4 pieces and I've eaten 2. So that's 2 and 2. 2 is half of 4, so 2/4 is equal to 1/2. Same with 3/6, 4/8, and on and on and on. So let's do some of those examples. Example 3 says, part A, which fraction below equals 1/2? We have 3/7, 6/12, and 5/9. I'm going to give you a little hint. If a fraction is going to equal 1/2, the denominator has to be even because only even numbers have halves. So that eliminates 3/7 and 5/9 automatically. 6 is half of 12, so 6/12 is equal to 1/2. B says, which is less than 1/2? Well, 3/7. 3 is less than half of 7 because 3 is half of 6. So really 3.5 is half of 7. So 3/7 is less than 1/2. 5/9, 5 is more than half of 9. If we had a circle and we divided it into 9 parts and I shaded 5 of them, a little more than half of the circle would be shaded. Whereas with 3/7, if I divided it into 7ths and I shaded only 3 pieces, a little less than half would be shaded. So let's move on. Compare, example 4, compare 3/8 and 1/2. Well, let's think about it. 3/8, is that less than, equal to, or greater than 1/2? Is 3 half of 8? No. So it can't be equal. So what is half of 8? 4. So is 3/8 less than or greater than 4/8? Well, obviously 3 is less than 4. So 3/8 is less than 1/2. We can look at it this way. So that's 8ths. And you can see that 3/8 is less than 1/2. So if you needed to visualize it, there it is. All right. Example 5 says round 6 7/10 to the nearest whole number. Well, halfway between 6 and 7 is 6.5. So we need to know, is 6 7/10, is it on the lower side of 6.5 or the higher side of 6.5? If it's lower than 6.5, we're going to round to 6. If it's higher than 6.5, we're going to round, or the same, we're going to round to 7. Well, 7, rewind a second. What's half of 10? So we need to know what, when we have 10 as the denominator, what is half of that, so we know what that's equal to half. Well, 5 is half of 10. So 7 is greater than 5, so 7/10 is greater than 1/2. So 6 7/10 is going to round up to 7. And you can look on 656 in example 5, and you can see that on a number line, so you can visualize it. Example 6. Estimate the perimeter and area of this rectangle. Okay, well, so it's here. I'm going to draw it out for you. So we have 7 7/8 inches. Four and 1/4 inches. Well, it says to estimate. So 7 7/8, that can round to 8 inches. And 4 and 1/4 can round down to 4 inches. Because 7/8 is closer to a whole, it's closer to the next number. And 1/4 tells us to round down because it's less than half. 7/8 is greater than half. So find the perimeter. Well, 8 plus 8, 16. 4 plus 4 is 8. 16 plus 8 is 24. Don't forget to be labeling those perimeters, guys. And then area, 8 times 4 is 32. And since it's area, it has to be inches squared. So that's how we would do estimating for perimeter and area when we have fractions, if it says to estimate. So just remember, if the fraction is less than half, you round down to that whole number, or if it's greater than half, you round up to the next whole number. And that's all I got for you today. You're going to do the lesson practice on 657. That's A through H. and then you'll do your independent work starting on 657, and that's even numbers, but do 29 instead of 30. So do 29, you don't have to do 30. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know, okay?